Welcome to another episode of Live with Bitcoin, a podcast where we delve into the real life stories of people whose lives have been transformed by Bitcoin. We're not here to talk about technical analysis or price predictions. We're interested in the human side of the Bitcoin story. My name is Vivian Chang, and I'm your host. Today, the guest who will be joining us is Benjamin Justman. Ben is a second-generation winemaker, building a low-time preference business on the Bitcoin standard. He's been making natural wine since 2019 in the Paonia, Colorado, which is the highest elevation grape-growing regions in North America. At his winery, Peony Lane, Ben has found success by letting the nature guide the winemaking process to let the unique flavors come through without a dodgy ingredients list. Starting a winery is an inherently low-moving operation, and during this process, Ben has been able to build his house and discovering Bitcoin, pushing him even further into a low-time preference lifestyle. Before winemaking, Ben was also someone who always wanted to have his own business and struggled to find a balance between waiting to build fast and having patience. I'm sure a lot of people share that, so for sure we'll be digging that into the chat. So Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Vivian. Happy to be here.
All right, let's get started. We both know now that you're into wine and Bitcoin, but I'm not gonna go to any of that first. I wanted to start with your time before winemaking. In my research, I found out that you studied geology in university. Why geology?
I was studying physics and then just was not vibing with it. And I took a geology class. And the way my school was structured, you took one class at a time for 3.5 weeks, and then you had 4 days off, and then you took your next class. So that really helped you dive into subjects. And it also oriented your time. So in geology, we could just go on field trips for a week and the professor could reasonably not really expect you to miss anything else because you only had one class. So I took my first geology class. We went to New Mexico for a week
Mm-hmm.
and I came back and was like, holy crap, I can just go camping for school. I'm going to do this. But also, it was a connection to the land that I really liked. It was cool thinking about long-term time processes, like how the world changes over millions of years and understanding the formations of the earth because I've always been someone who, well, I grew up as a child playing in the mud all the time and living on an orchard. And so learning this deeper level of the world and how it was formed and how it is today is was just really vibed with me.
I see. What else have you dabbled into between, I guess, graduating from university and winemaking?
So right after college, I moved to Telluride and ski bummed for a winter, and then I moved to Vietnam for a year and taught English. While I was there, I read a book about the Federal Reserve called The Only Game in Town, about how they really have no options left. This was in 2017, and I didn't find like really dive into Bitcoin for another 3 years, but that kind of laid the framework of, okay, I know the Fed's screwed, and then I found Bitcoin. I'm like, oh, cool, here's another option.
How did it translate into making wine in 2019?
It really just came down to my dad had been making wine reasonably as a hobby winemaker for a long time, and he knew I was looking for what to do next with my life, and he had his own business his entire life. So good person to talk to about that. And really, he just like kind of told me the numbers of like what it costs to make a wine bottle and what you can sell it for. And I was like, well, that makes sense. You have all the equipment to at least get me started. I'll need to upgrade it. And you figured out how to make wine, so I bet I can figure out how to make wine. So I, thought about it for a little bit and kind of just jumped in and went for it, got a liquor license and made wine that first year. I How the job allowed me to is it gave me the flexibility to work 4 10-hour days, and then on Thursday night I would drive home to Paonia, which is a 5-hour drive, make wine 3 12-hour days, and then drive back 5 hours, then do that again for an entire month was probably my biggest stretch of work in my life. And I mean, once that's done, then the wine kind of just sits in a barrel for a year, so you can chill to a degree. And then I everything shut down in March that year, and then I moved home to build my house back to Paonia.
Nice, nice. So tell me more about your wine. Natural wine. What exactly is natural wine? How is it different from most store-bought conventional wine?
Natural wine is kind of going back to the roots of winemaking, where you're just being a bit more hands off in a lot of different processes. So in the grape growing process, we are not spraying anything for the well, I guess we spray for powdery mildew. That's it. It's an organic spray. And the idea is we're trying to not disrupt the natural microbiome because the wild yeast that lives in our vineyard is what we use to ferment. And if you're continuously disrupting that, you're going to get yeast that turns your what you want to be wine into vinegar. So we're trying to just let things go on their own path. We don't irrigate often at all. Where the roots go super far deep to get water, to get new nutrients, to get that brings out like some more flavor in the wine. And in the winemaking process, I'm essentially not adding anything. I'm just taking the wine in each phase and moving it to the next phase and putting it in physical locations to succeed, putting it in the right space and letting the natural processes do its thing. So you get wine that leaves you feeling a lot better, has more interesting flavors, in my opinion, just because you're going to get more unique flavors. Because I, as a winemaker, am not really in control. It's whatever flavors were meant, like whatever flavors my vineyard wanted to produce are what are there. In conventional winemaking, you can kind of manipulate wine to taste a lot of different ways. There's chemicals that you can add in to change flavor, texture, tannins, preservatives, all different things. And even the yeast that you add initially is gonna affect the flavor of the wine. So you can get you can make wine that tastes all different ways. And in that, a lot of people do have pretty sensitive reactions to what they put in wine. Know a lot of people that get headaches from drinking wine and therefore kind of stop drinking. And then they have my wine or another natural wine and they feel great. There's not much transparency in it. So it's hard to kind of know what you're buying. There's no ingredients list required on a wine bottle when there's a lot of things added to normal wine. So it's a bit hard to tell and people just kind of assume it's wine gives them a headache, but it's really the things in the wine that give them a headache.
Interesting. I guess sometimes when people don't see the label, they don't their minds don't really go there. Oh, how what else are in the wine, right? It kind of reminds me of my experience with coffee beans. So when you buy coffee beans from coffee shops, oftentimes you see on the bag that they roast the beans and they've gone through some sort of process. It's oftentimes washed, and there are very small portion of natural processed beans. And then I've asked them like why you have so little natural beans, why they're always washed. And then what they said is that it is to keep to have them go through the same process to keep the consistency of the flavor, but at the same time the naturally processed ones are almost guaranteed that it will always taste better than the washed ones, and this is what I always go for. So I guess it does make a huge difference.
The reason that your natural coffee beans are tasting better is because that's the high quality coffee bean. When you wash them and you go for that consistency, you can use lower quality coffee beans because you're not worried about um, yeah, if that increases, I don't know coffee, but if that increases consistency, you can use worse coffee beans. So you can farm using worse practices if you control everything, and um, that's in the wine process as well. So I find beauty in the difference of each vintage. It just requires a bit more thought because yeah, you buy my 2020 and you expect the same flavors from my 2021. That's just not going to happen realistically. Like I'm still the same winemaker and I'm still trying to do the same things on my end, but I'm leaving so much up to nature that it is changing. And as a business, it's kind of hard to, you want your wine to be as good every time. You want a consistent product, but in farming and trying to keep up with whatever position nature puts you in, that consistency is unrealistic. And I think in the long run, it leads you towards a worse product overall or in aggregate.
I want to talk about the process from 0 to 1 because I think you didn't have you were, let's put it this way, you weren't a wine expert before you getting into this.
No.
It must have been to take a leap of faith for something that you don't know what will happen, how it will pan out psychologically. What was it like?
It was a pretty it was definitely a pretty difficult time to, yeah, there's so much up in the air. I mean, I bet what I invested before I did a single wine sale, I'd invested um, maybe 3 or 4 times what my net worth was before I started the winery into the winery. So I had no product market fit. I had, no experience making wine beforehand, and definitely had some serious mistakes going into it before I knew anything about whether it was going to work or not. So yeah, there was a lot of really stressful nights, and it was very hard. But what gave me confidence was I knew my dad made wine that was a hit. Like, he made wine that people loved. There's 10 wineries in my area, and he had the, like, it wine for the period of time that he was selling it, which was 2 years. So I knew it, like, if my dad could do it, I felt like I could do it because I he was just going for it, and I started actually doing research and was fully invested in this, whereas for him it was more than a hobby, but not his lifeline. So worst case, it was a great learning experience. But yeah, the first year of selling wine, I sold out pretty quick, and once I had that product market fit, I knew I was going somewhere. So because every year I'm going to get better at making wine, selling out of literally the first wine you ever make in your life is a pretty cool feeling. So just building from there, and like you said, it's a slow process. Everything takes, if I do any expansion, any new winemaking, like, I don't that product doesn't hit the market for 2 years. I don't see the financial return for at least 3, realistically, if it's going to take me a full year to sell that. So, yeah, everything about this is just, building for the future, and who knows where I'll be in 3 years. So you're constantly thinking about where you want to be in the future, how big you want to get, because you have to do it now. And the lucky thing, though, is that with wine, if you don't sell something, it gets better with time. So if you get too big, it's really easy to scale back, but it's really hard to scale up.
In hindsight, do you feel like you underestimated how hard it would be when you first started?
When I first started was the hardest part. That first winemaking season when I had a full-time job elsewhere, 5 hours away, and had to commute and not know what I was doing, like, that not only was scary, but it was insane. I was running on absolute fumes of, like, huge days of work. And then I would just say every winemaking season since then, even if I've grown in scale, has become a bit easier because I know what I'm doing and I live in Paonia. So it's the commute was hard. But yeah, there's a ton of work, but at the same time, like, I just it doesn't feel that way when you're working for yourself. Maybe there's days where you're tired, but you got what you needed to get done, and you're going to see the direct benefit of it. It's just so much less tiring to work for yourself.
It's the same for everything. It's always the hardest when it first begins. And I'm sure a lot of people share this experience, and I'm sure a lot of people are going through this painful kind of foundational beginning right now. So, what are the things that you think were worked on you that you want to share with keep people going to push through that phase to see the light of the at the end of the tunnel?
I think you just have to, well, I mean, I don't know, everyone's different, but I think for me it was like, what else am I gonna do? Like, I don't want to work for someone. I want to have a business, and this is the business I'm starting. Um, but I think the hardest thing for me was not being like extremely passionate about wine when I got going into it, and being like, am I really gonna start a winery and be a winemaker for the rest of my life, and I'm not passionate about wine? So you have to find what you're passionate about. And I've both found a lot more interest in wine. Uh, Being around it all the time, you explore really cool things about it. And then what I realized is the thing about wine that I am passionate about is both sharing like what I've created with people and the community that wine brings. So I if I make wine, I'm part of a lot of awesome conversations that have around that people have around a wine bottle, you know? That's my favorite part is the people, and wine brings a lot of human connection. So yeah, I guess it's not like wine is my vehicle, but it's like the next order things are the things that I find passion in. And so when when I'm talking to someone that's just kind of starting something, I'm curious what they're actually passionate about, because if you're just doing something to do it, you're you're probably not going to win. You can work your ass off, but if someone's passionate about it, they're going to work harder than you because they want to. So I think you gotta find your passion. You got to ask yourself why you're doing it, and hopefully have that long-term vision, even if that shifts.
That's so true because it's not sometimes it's not about getting excited or getting passionate about the specific thing, but finding a connection between what you're already passionate about as genuinely as a human being, and then to link to what you're doing, and just like you said, using it as a vehicle to achieve what you want in life, and find that connection that you're keep you that keeps you going. I'm gonna ask you a hard question here. Your dad made wine, and then had success, and then I remember um, doing research and watching you on other podcasts, and you said he barely knew what he was doing, and then he was just making it and following a process, and you were too. So how much do you think it was luck?
Me,
Yeah,
my success. Oh,
yeah.
like um, so I define luck as when, or good luck as when preparation meets opportunity. And so I was given an amazing opportunity to start a winery, with great uh, the great foundation kind of already there to do it. And I had to work my ass off to get there. So yeah, I mean, at a certain point, like, I have no control over my winemaking process to a degree. I have control over the farming, which sets a great foundation for the winemaking process. But every year, the reason people don't do wild fermentations is because you are not in control. When you do a, a lab produced yeast strain, you know what you're getting in that fermentation. I'm assuming after 15 years of fermenting with wild yeast that our vineyard is still going to produce a great microbiome every year. It might not happen one year, and that would be horrible, but I'm leaving a lot up to chance, I would say.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking this is because many people, like you said, for you, somehow the low hanging fruits is to have a vineyard and do winemaking professionally, and a lot of people may not have that opportunity. And I wanted to talk about the concept of luck because there's literally a book to teach you how to be lucky, and it's
Hmm.
a science study where they um, did it on a number of people significantly, statistically significant, I guess, and then they basically found some correlations of how people are lucky, like how people are or how some people are more luckier than others, and then it's their correlation, of course, is not causation, but there's different mindset that goes into these things. And just like you said, there's a lot of times where things that we can't control, but to what extent you can work your ass off towards the direction you're going into. And you're right, like opportunity is always left to the people who are more prepared. So I guess it's a message to send of if you're in a less fortunate space, keep going. And then once when you're ready, when you're accumulating your effort to a certain degree, luck air quote will find you in the least expected way, I guess.
Sure. And so it's yeah, there's an element of luck, I would say, in what I've built. And to like, if you're wherever you are, you're lucky to be here. Like you've won the lottery to be alive, and then there's different levels above that. To call what I've built luck would be to ignore the huge failures I've had and the hard work it took to get where I am. I think what the thing I think back of is to, like, how I've created any luck in my life or any success in my life is one really foundational principle. The one thing I really remember my mom drilling into my head was whatever, like, find what you want to do, because whatever you want to do, you're going to be successful at, is the message my mom sent to me. So I've been working on the assumption that as long as I find what I want to do, I'm going to be good at it. And therefore, like, when I break through, when I have huge failures, I'm like, look, this is the learning process. Is this what I want to do? I'm going to figure it out. And I'm able to move forward from those. I think you find yourself pretty unlucky is if you let bad things compound on each other. Whereas if you can let bad things slide and keep diving into the good things, you start finding more quote unquote luck.
Yeah, yeah, totally. That's 100% true. Um, Now let's shift in gears. I want to talk about Bitcoin. How did Bitcoin come into all of this, entered your life? What happened?
So I was really into personal finance before I found Bitcoin. Basically, as soon as I got out of college, I built a budgeting spreadsheet and just like dove into learning about personal finance and unfortunately the fiat economy and living in that world. And so then I did everything I could with my personal finances as far as like getting them on autopilot, having a savings account that gave you 2% interest to keep up with what I thought was inflation, investing in index funds for retirement, just like all passive investing, just trying to do like what every financial advisor says: budgeting, savings account for a few months, passive investing is the way to make it. Once I got that set for myself, then I was like, oh wow, this was cool. I like teaching. I want to help my friends. Like, you guys aren't budgeting. Let's like have lunch, and I'll help you set up a budget. I'll get you the right credit card, get you the right savings account. Like, we're gonna get your life going. Um, so I was just working, helping friends, talking to friends about that. And then in 2019, the interest rate on my savings account dropped to, I mean, like 0.25% or something, basically zero. And so that was kind of my baseline assumption was, I know inflation's eating away my savings, but I have a 2% savings account, and therefore I'm staying even, and that's fine. I'm not trying to grow my money in that savings account. That was my foundation. And when that got dropped out, I was like, well, shoot, I have to find something else because this isn't working anymore. And then I started the business. My finances went crazy, like totally different paradigm. Investing as much money as you own into a business, and um, my first real, like, I thought I was living with a guy in Denver who I'd just met off Craigslist, now a great friend, and he was getting into Bitcoin, but he was kind of my, I called him my crazy libertarian friend because um, I didn't see the world the same way as him, but he was into Bitcoin. Didn't really try and convince me on it. And then when I moved back home, I instantly moved in with a good friend from high school who was a Bitcoiner, and we would talk finance, geopolitics, all kinds of things. And so inevitably Bitcoin comes up, and he's like, you should look into this. And while I was building the house, I just put on Bitcoin podcasts and started listening to Bitcoin podcasts, and eventually um, had a lot of those, as every Bitcoiner knows, just those breakthroughs of like, holy shit moments. And um, yeah, then I've realized that, I was super into personal finance. I was super into education. So obviously I'm trying to educate all my friends, and I'm passionate about Bitcoin. So I've just learned to follow my passions. And if I'm also doing wine, then I just want to do what I can, Bitcoin and wine. And so I started accepting Bitcoin for wine sales last summer, and got some awesome feedback. But it was really just trying to be an education vehicle, trying to be out there as a successful business who accepts Bitcoin and change the common perception.
So, in your trips to farmers market, do people get, like no coiners specifically, do they get interested, curious about you accepting Bitcoin? How does it work?
So I don't really, it's farmers markets are pretty fast paced. I'm trying to do tastings, I'm trying to sell wine. So it's rare that I have the opportunity to like explain Bitcoin to someone. There are times where I do, and that's awesome. I love taking the time to talk to someone about that. But for the most part, the experience is people walking by and being like, "Oh my God, he accepts Bitcoin. Whoa." And then just walking by, you know.
I guess that's a touch point,
There
right? It subconsciously it must
mhm.
have stayed, and then when they see enough Bitcoin signs at ATMs, their local pubs, and farmers market, they're gonna start thinking about, okay, I see this super frequently. It's just a mere exposure effect where you see something enough and you naturally grow favorable to it. How human mind works, so it's offers a great touch point for. So you're secretly orange peeling a lot of people without you knowing.
Exactly, and that was my main goal for doing it. Then there's all the boomers that come by and be like, "Be careful with that Bitcoin." I'm like, man. One guy was like, "Be careful, Bitcoin's down 50% this year." I was like, "Man, it's down 70%, bro." Um, but then there are people that come up and are psyched. Like, I think the most valuable things I've had is a Bitcoiner's just living in the wild, living his life, her life, and they're just walking down the street and they see my sign, and then we chat, and it's clear that we're both Bitcoiners. It's not like, oh, I own some. It's like we're into this. It's really cool to meet other Bitcoiners, and it's especially cool to meet other Bitcoiners just randomly in the world. So I've made some friends with that, and then I've just ended up meeting a lot of Bitcoiners through that because everyone's on the same mission. We're all trying to orange pill the world. Everyone doing it in their own ways.
Well, that's why we're having this conversation right now. And part of the reason this is a saying is I want to bring everyday Bitcoiners together and see there are people just like you are fighting for the same mission and are living their lives. And by incorporating Bitcoin into some aspects of their lives, either it's in their career, in their personal lives, in their financial decisions, or how they conduct themselves, beliefs in the world, I try to make this more relatable, kind of a charging station when maybe Bitcoin price when it's down and you're having a bad day. Maybe tune into this and see there's so many people hanging on to this just like you do. So keep paddling.
Yeah, it really helps to have people around when, I mean, it's especially if you're like really wrong about the price in the short term, which I think a lot of us have been. Um, or like our long-term vision is, it's just not, it's too early. It's not coming as to fruition. It's really nice to have other people around because for most people, most of the people in their lives already think they're crazy and now think they're crazy and losing all their money. And you know how little research they've done into money. I know how little research all my friends have done into money because I was trying to help them before I found Bitcoin. People are clueless. They don't know anything about their finance. They don't know anything about the Federal Reserve. They don't know anything about the dollar or whatever money they use. And I saw that before Bitcoin. So now, yeah, it's easy for me to be like, yo, cool. You think I'm losing my mind? Like, I know you don't know anything about money, so I'm gonna, discount your opinion. But also, it's these people I care about in a lot of different ways, or people that really care about me, and that energy, regardless of how much stock I put into it, some of that energy, that negative energy, does seep in. And having other people in my life that have done the research and get it is super helpful for mental health, mindset. And I just find that generally, if I'm like picking different baskets of people to go make new friends on or to just be around, I'm going to find the largest percentage of awesome people within Bitcoiners. Like, I'm not going to be friends with every Bitcoiner, everyone's different. But if we are both Bitcoiners and we share some other passion, we're probably going to get on really well.
True. Yeah, it's amazing how easy to start a conversation with any Bitcoiners. It's just a natural conversation starters, and within 5 minutes you start to get to know a lot about them because they get into how they got into Bitcoin, how they how they have changed since. And it's really you basically skip the small talks and then get straight to know a person quite well, relatively, right, in a really short amount of time. So in your circle and yourself, what do you think people are interested in Bitcoin? Like, what got them really interested in Bitcoin? Because there's so many aspects, there's so many layers to it. There's the technology, there's the network, you have the financial aspect of it for sure, and then you also have the financial freedom part where it brings a lot of access that wasn't previously available. So for you and for people around you, what do you think are the biggest appeals of Bitcoin?
For me, it was personal finance. I mean, that was my lens. I just wanted my money to not be inflated away. Now I realize it's being stolen. If you do something successful, people are going to want to emulate, and you get a lot more, your words mean a lot more. So I find the better I do in wine, the more people trust me about what I say about Bitcoin. In the short term, you don't really know what you're going to get. So when I make wine, I can taste it and I'd be like, oh, that's probably going to be good. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't know what it's going to be like in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. And when you buy Bitcoin, you're also having that long-term time horizon because you don't know if it's going to go down the next day or for the next year, or up. And so you don't know if you're making the right financial decision in the short term, but you're on the right path in the long term. So it's really, both of them have really taught me to be patient. Like with wine, like you said, I don't see any financial return for so long, but when I started it, I'm so fired up. I just started a business. Like, let me do that. But no, I have to have a full-time job for the next 2 years while I'm starting the business. I can't get going on it. And really, like now or I mean, the last few summers, but now I'm finally like at a point where I'm like, I will never need another job again. This is what I do. It's taken 4 years to get to that point, and I've been ready to just do wine for that entire time. And with Bitcoin, uh, I hit my point of like freaking out. This is amazing. This is the only thing I want to own. Going um, super far into it, and then for the entire year of 2022, oh, I bought the dip. Oh shoot, there was another dip. I bought the dip. It's just continuously dipping, which is great in the long term, but in the short term, you're like, man, this is a little disheartening. And it's that same way with like wanting to sell your wine, but you're like, no, it's just not ready. I have to wait.
I see. Yeah, it's amazing how the entire landscape of your life start to shift when you adapt that low time preference. But it's not easy. It's not easy. And you live day to day, and then what you're experiencing in the moment is very, very different. And it can be hard sometimes to always have that mindset very, very strongly. So for someone who are kind of struggling in the short term but want to keep this mindset, what do you think what are some things that have helped you to keep your mental state steady, I guess?
That's something I've definitely spent a lot of time thinking about. And the most important habit that I adopted was journaling. I find that I journal every night before bed, just stream of consciousness, whatever I want to put on the page goes on the page, for how long or how short I want, and that definitely, like, just saying I feel better is very much true. But anytime I go through a down phase in my life where, like, maybe for a week I'm just off and I don't feel great, then I go and I journal and I'm like, whoa, I haven't journaled in a week. Well, maybe that's why I'm down, you know? Um, so that always seems to correlate, at least. And then the recently I've been in 2022, my goal was to work on my body and work on my diet as a way to become a better businessman, because I didn't feel like I felt like my body was holding me back to a degree, both mentally and physically. And you want to give it the right nutrients and give it the right maintenance to succeed. And so, in working on that and finding my own balance, um, throughout the last year, I'm just in a much better place physically, and that's put me in a better spot mentally to stay a bit more balanced. Also, like, when you're going through something hard, when you're building something hard, like, you're probably just going to have down times. It's going to suck at times. And I think just knowing that you're going to get through it, and um, if you believe you're on the right path, listen to that and you'll make it through. And yeah, it's not a straight line. Things suck sometimes. And I just always try and think back, like, I know what it feels like to feel amazing, and I know I'm going to get back there again, but I'm not there right now. What's this next baby step I can take? Yeah, that's fine. It sucks sometimes, but um, it's almost good, like, because you're not doing everything perfect. So even if you're on the right track, even if you're feeling great, there's probably something you're not doing, and over time, that's going to build up and bring you down. So when you're in those down times, you felt oh, this thing was small, but it's not working. I got to cut that out of my life, or at least try to avoid it. And it's those times that you kind of figure out what's dragging you, and you can build up stronger every time.
Yeah, and also it's all relative. And if you're always feeling amazing, then you can't feel it anymore because there's no reference point, there's no bar. So I guess it's part of the beauty of life. It's to go through these ups and downs and experience the journey. So for those of who are kind of struggling right now, who are pulling through a difficult time, I guess hang in there, and we're all Bitcoiners. It's going to work out. We just need to get ourselves from A to B.
I'm kind of recently not liking that phrasing of where Bitcoin's gonna win. It's gonna work out. It needs to win, and it's not passive. I mean, I'm it's like, do your thing, and everyone does their thing differently. For me, I love education, and so I'm trying to push Bitcoin, and I'm also trying to save my friends. So, like, the more yeah, I don't think Bitcoin winning is a passive thing at this point. And I don't want to say we all need to do something about it, but it feels great to try and move it forward.
But at the same time, if it needs to win, and there's only so many of us, then you it's almost like you need to do something. You need to go out there and contribute in a way that you're comfortable with, or we're happy to. It doesn't have to be being on the street, orange peeling every passengers you see, but I guess just be available for those that are around you to have that conversation. And I'm maybe in your circle, you're already the annoying one trying to talk about Bitcoin all the time. And maybe that's not the case, but I guess just let's all be ready to be a touch point when somebody is ready to have that conversation.
Yeah, I think that's generally just being a good person. Um, I think that like, going out and approaching people is about Bitcoin just doesn't seem to work all that much. Put yourself out there, be your best self as a Bitcoiner, and when people are ready, they'll come to you. I think we all pretty much went through the phase, however long it was for you, of I can't talk about anything other than Bitcoin. This is insane. So I just like to think that all your friends, everyone around you knows that you're a Bitcoiner and you're the person they're going to come to if they have any questions eventually. So I think just be a good person, be out there, be yourself, and um, if you feel comfortable, do it as a Bitcoiner. Just you know, don't hide that part of you, and I think that's helping. I don't think anyone needs to like do anything specific to move Bitcoin forward. It's just that it needs to win, and it's not a passive thing. So if there is anything you want to do, it's great to do it because it does help everyone.
For sure, for sure. Um, you were sharing that the process of building a healthy diet and work on the body and the mind really helps in increasing productivity and just be a better person in general. How was the process like for you? What changed? What were some of the things you did that helped you to get where you are right now, lifestyle wise?
I'm by no means in a perfect spot, but it's something I've always struggled with diet, and I just didn't really have any education around it. Um, I kind of like I grew up on a farm and was had access to all this amazing food, but it was a classic rebellion case where I was like, "Oh, parents, you like this stuff, like I'm gonna hate it, so I'm gonna eat a bunch of processed garbage." And really, it became pretty visceral for me. I just like when I was working that job in Denver, I was eating microwave lunch, didn't have time to cook or didn't make time to cook, and felt so empty inside, like to the point where some of my ski buddies were like, "Damn, dude, you have no energy. Like maybe you should go to the doctor or something." But then when I moved back to Paonia, I was able to just have a bit more time and better access to better food. And there's also not really any restaurants around. So you are cooking for yourself a lot more. It's a small town. So in that I start cooking for myself, and then I start learning a little bit more about what my body does better, and it's slow steps. And I'm at the point where if I just eat grass-fed beef and eggs, I'm pretty happy. I eat more than that, but that's kind of been the foundation of like if I'm feeling rough, I just go eat a steak and eggs, and I'm feeling a bit better. And trying to avoid any anything processed. I just don't feel great when I do that. That said, like I still eat that stuff from now and then, but like I've kind of started noticing, so let's say someone offers me an Oreo one day and I eat the Oreo, then the next day I might be eating that sugar is just such an addictive substance that it sends you down this hole, and it sends me down a hole. I feel like it takes a week for me to get back to normal. So I try and
Just with
resist
one
it.
Oreo?
Well, that's the gateway drug, right? Um, no, it's more like I'm just trying to stay steady. I'm trying to have a little bit more discipline when it comes to that. Not that I was ever super undisciplined, just uneducated, I think. But now I'm educated to a degree, know what works for me, and it just I got to listen to that and stick to it because I know it works in the long run. Where in the short run, having that Oreo is pretty fun.
I don't know if it's just my echo chamber. It seems like Bitcoiners are a large population of beef eaters, and I've seen a lot of Bitcoiners around me. There are on carnivore diet, which is basically just meat and nothing else, meat and eggs, and that's it. And they all, I've heard really good feedback about this diet. Maybe I try myself. It sounds like a lot and it's a lot to adapt, but I've really seen a lot of people doing this, especially Bitcoiners for some reason, that are on this diet.
Yeah, I think I mean I can't speak to whether a carnivore diet works. I'm definitely no carnivore, and have no desire to really go that route. I just have found that eating more beef and center, like not worrying about vegetables, worrying about that baseline, just eat. If I eat a pound of beef, that's a good meal. Don't worry about cooking broccoli as well. Um, I still do, but that's given me a lot of boost. And I think this is just me speculating, but as Bitcoiners, we a lot of us like we're staunch like just Bitcoin, and so then we start kind of wanting to apply that to other parts of our life. We want to both get to the root of things and kind of, if we can, just keep it simple and commit to one thing. And I think that people find a carnivore diet is both fulfills both of those things. You can get to a very simple baseline high performance level of nutrition just from um, simplicity like that. I I've never done it. Like I said, I have no desire to do it. I don't know like if it quote unquote works and who it works for, but it's yeah, I don't know. Like I started eating a lot more beef after going to the Beef Initiative conference, and I saw I talked to the meat mafia guys for a while, and their energy was insane. It was like, I want that. What do you guys do? Oh, you eat a ton of beef? I'm gonna try that. And then uh, I started eating a ton of beef, and I started feeling great. So kind of just diving into that. I don't know. You got to experiment for yourself, and it's it's cool to do it's cool to try anything once, go for it and give it a shot. But keep an open mind.
That's for sure. Another lifestyle question coming in for you. I saw a tweet saying you want to be the Bitcoiner who would never work on a computer. Let's elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean that's a bit of it's definitely just said a bit in jest, but basically like in starting my two previous side hustles, I learned that I don't want to be doing a ton of like personally don't want to be doing a ton of marketing. I don't want to be at that point, I thought social media, but Instagram, I found is a huge stressor for me. And I don't want to be in the weeds, like building websites, coding, all that stuff. Like that is just so stressful to me. I don't want to build my life where I'm on a computer inside. I want to build a life where I'm out talking to people because I enjoy that. Working with my hands because I enjoy that. And yeah, there's times on the computer. Don't want to be 100% off the computer, but the work that I like doing is face to face. And so I may hire people to do all those things. And it's just kind of a recognition of me knowing what I like and dislike and wanting to step further into those things and further away from the things I don't like. Um, in Bitcoin, there's so much jargon. There's so many things that like I do not understand and just have no minimal interest of diving into. Um, and there's a lot of Bitcoiners who are super into tech, super into coding, super into things that I just have no interest in actually doing myself. Um, that it kind of turned, there's a lot of times where it's like, oh, we say Bitcoin's for everyone, but oh, you don't know what this thing is. You haven't set this up. And it's like, if I know quote unquote when Bitcoin wins, maybe we won't need to worry about as many things, but also we need to I want to say we because I'm not the one that's going to be doing it, but I'm an example of a Bitcoiner who doesn't need to be super technical and doesn't want to be super technical, but still wants to be all in on Bitcoin and get a lot of the benefits. So yeah, I think that's more of just a recognition of what I like and dislike doing and putting it as a juxtaposition to what a lot of Bitcoiners do for fun or for work or just are more comfortable doing.
I'm sure a lot of people actually share this view of wanting to get outside more, want to meet real people and still have a professional career. What would you do you have any tips or ideas on if they don't already have the community of people they can go to talk to, what are some ways you can think of to help them get started on finding something in real life to hold on to without having to work on a computer all the time?
Just say yes.
Say yes to things
Yeah.
and reach out to people.
Yeah. I mean, you like be open and say yes to new opportunities. Like don't live live for the framework of abundance. You have time to go do these things. You can. And you say yes. Oh, then I didn't like that. Cool. Don't do it again. Say yes to the next thing. you don't meet people, you don't change your life by saying no to new things. You just have to go out there and do stuff and get uncomfortable and see like, hey, I was uncomfortable this time, but I felt like these seeds were there, so I'm going to go again and give it another shot. Um, yeah, you have to go out and try new things. Like if you want to make change in your life, you got to put in the work.
We make small choices in our lives and we choose certain things over others, but they all contribute to, in a way that contribute to, does it make me happy? Does it make me feel fulfilled? So, what does happiness and fulfillment look like for you?
That's the journey I'm on to find out. If I already knew that, I don't think the rest of my life would be as exciting. Um, just trying to find what works, and that's the end goal that I probably will never find. You know, I'll probably never find that total. This is what makes me happy experience. My goal is just to get closer to that every day or every week, whatever time scale you want. That's the journey I'm on.
And what is Bitcoin to you? Where does Bitcoin sits in that journey?
Bitcoin is me not having to worry about my future finances. It's setting things on autopilot, just like I was trying to do in the fiat system, but it's setting things on autopilot. Just have this, don't screw up, or if you screw up, you do have a little bit of a cushion. But if you just set these things, if you just set your baseline and your foundation continues to grow, you're going to be fine in the future. So that gives you a lot more freedom in the present to take risk, pursue your dreams, do whatever you need to do. Um, I mean, there's so many other things to what is Bitcoin, but that's the way I use it on a personal level. I don't have to worry about as much self sovereignty. I don't have to worry about um, my other currency hyperinflating in the short term. The dollar is sucks, but it works in the short term. Um, so I that's my specific focus, and I find that like if all my if everyone else gets on this ride where you can just be like, oh, cool, I'm just literally all I have to do is save for the future and I'm gonna be fine. Like I've seen the freedom that that's given me, and I just want to see that in other people. So it's exciting for me to think about the growth other people and the freedom other people will enjoy if they find Bitcoin.
That's a great way to think about it because if you because personal sovereignty is something that's extremely lacking today and it's hard to get right. And if you get this one big thing, an important thing on autopilot, and you it frees up your time and energy and have a peace of mind to essentially explore in a safer environment.
Yeah, it takes a lot of pressure off me, um, being like Bitcoin needs to win. If it doesn't, we're kind of screwed anyway. If it does, I'll probably be fine future financially. So I have a business that I don't have to get huge to be able to make it. I can build a business because I want to build a business. I can build a business around the things that I want to do and make it a lifestyle that I want to pursue. I don't have to chase money. I can just chase a baseline amount of money. Business functions, business runs well, business pays for my life, um, and I can grow it as big as I want, as big as I feel makes me happy.
Yeah, totally. There are also many Bitcoiners that I see are longing that sort of retro lifestyle of owning a farm, be off the grid, grow their own vegetables, crops, beef eaters as well, and be basically just as much self sufficient as possible. And you're someone who's actually living that lifestyle. And oftentimes we can have things in our mind where we think it will be amazing in concept because most people didn't haven't had experience to experience daily life, a routine over a long period of time on a farm. So what is like to actually live in a remote town, be on a farm, is that really that romantic? And help us visualize what is like on a daily basis.
It's an extremely romanticized vision that people have. Um, I meet a lot of people that moved to where I'm from because they always wanted to retire on a farm. or have an orchard, or they're like, oh, oh, cool, I've always wanted to have a vineyard. You don't know how many times I hear that. And like, cool. That's not like, it's great. Like I enjoy my life, but at the same time, I know a lot of people that then do that. They buy a small orchard and they have no idea how much work it comes to. Like they want to retire to an orchard. So you want to work 10 hours a day in retirement? My dad worked his whole life building houses, retired, quote unquote, at like 55, and now works 8 to 10 hours a day on the farm. It's his farm, it's his property, it's his life. It's like he was working for himself before, now he's working for himself still, but you can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna own a farm and I'll go garden every once in a while. That'll be nice. No, it's a continuous thing. It never stops, and you're always responsible for it. You are responsible for what it produces, and your work is directly into that. Like there are people who would be really good at it, but just going from like living your standard office lifestyle to buying a farm and going and living on it, that's there's a lot of people that are not gonna like quote unquote survive that transition and love it. It's Yeah, it's we'd like to move more in that direction, but um, I don't think going all in is for everyone. I mean, take steps and move closer, but like if you if you say you're living in the city and um, Bitcoin goes up and you sell everything, you leave all your friends and you go buy a farm out in the country, like you're going to wake up to a pretty harsh reality that there's not a ton going on, and you have to be able to make all of your own fun and put in a lot of work to see the fruit. And because there's like a certain baseline of you have to put in a ton of work to see any fruits of your labor. It's not like, oh, if I just do a little, I'll see a little. It's You got to do a lot, and maybe you'll see some. Um, yeah, living in a small town is quiet, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty peaceful, and it's pretty freeing. Um, the biggest thing I missed living in Denver was just being able to go for a drive. That's how I unwind. And if you just go for a drive in the city, you kind of get stressed. But in Paonia, I can just go for a drive up dirt roads and get to a cool view and be there alone. And it's, you know, if you move to a small town, you got to be pretty comfortable living alone or being alone a lot, working hard, and seeing the same people over and over.
Well, thanks for the insight. I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate that because oftentimes they don't have the um, proper channel to hear about these things from, and all they have people that they share the same wishful thinking, I guess, and then it just echoes. And it's always good to talk to someone who's actually
Yeah.
lived that concept
So
and
I'm
see how it
coming
goes.
like the total opposite way, where I grew up like in the tiny town and on the farm that we grew all our own food. And then I was like, screw this, I'm going to the city. And the city didn't work for me. So now I've come back and
Mm.
I've found my balance. And I find that I would just expect that to be the same for people coming the other way. There are people that from my town that move to the city and love it. Just like there are people who move from the city to a farm and love it. It's just um, there's there's so much romanticism in farming, um, that, and I've seen so many people buy the farm, especially retire on the farm, their life stream, and then like, oh, you have to work.
And then my last question here is, are there any specific piece of media for either it's a movie or a book, a podcast episode, anything, any form of medium that has helped you particularly understand better about Bitcoin that you think would be helpful, that you would recommend? It doesn't have to be just Bitcoin. It can be anything that has helped you or aid your understanding.
So the pieces of content that probably most affected me were the Sailor series with Robert Breedlove, which I think a lot of Bitcoiners would point people to, understanding money. And then for me, I was so deep in the fiat background that like understanding inflation was a total mind fuck. And I didn't, one of the last things to click for me was understanding how um, technology is deflationary, and our like any inflation we experience is theft the on top of like things should just be getting cheaper. So the Jeff Booth podcast with Robert Breedlove was super helpful. He also that podcast was just about his book, The Price of Tomorrow. So I like podcasts. I don't really like reading about Bitcoin. Um, so The Price of Tomorrow is a great book. And then I think it just helps to find like figure out what you're passionate about, where you want to learn. Like I'm gonna point people in directions that I learned from a ton, and that was personal finance. Like I'm a math oriented guy. Like there's not a lot of people that are super into that. So I gotta, you gotta find the other person's window and find that. So basically now it seems like there's podcasts for everything, and every little bit of passion, every window. So if you're passionate about something, if you can find the Bitcoiners that are also into that thing, Twitter's a great resource for that. I mean, there's Bitcoiners who are into everything. So um, it's it's a growing community now, and you can kind of fit in wherever you want to fit in, and just listen. Like when you when you're really into something, you kind of see how the world sees it totally wrong because you're on the inside and you see it. And so, say you're really into, like we were talking about, health stuff. If you're really into health stuff, you also know that like the food pyramid is completely messed up, and um, there's a lot of things that are told to you that are wrong. And so that if you listen to someone that's like, yo, I hear you on all these things food related, and then also, hey, let's talk about Bitcoin, like then that window of connection is so there and you're so ready to learn. If you just like the Sailor series is long and slow. Those are brutal podcasts if you're not into it. I don't expect anyone who's not into history, finance, like just willing to put in the time to just dive into that. That's insane. So I think you just find what you're passionate about and try to find people who are into Bitcoin who are also passionate about that, and that'll make learning a lot more fun.
That's a good point because if you're, like you said, if you're in the end of something, then you realize a lot of what you were told in the past were wrong. And then once you establish that feedback loop where in other areas in life where I'm not an insider, air quotes, what I'm exposed to might be wrong. And
Hmm.
that opens doors of self education, that opens doors of being open minded, of being more open minded towards people who may not agree with you, who have a second opinion, and maybe then is the time for you to listen more on what other people have to say, and then the open-mindedness will finally lead you to something else, and that's totally true. Well, thanks a lot for joining me today. Ben is looking to provide education about the benefits of natural wine and regenerative agriculture, as well as personal finance and Bitcoin. So, for those of you who'd like to check out Ben's work, you can find him more on Twitter at Ben Justman. Am I right?
Yep. And on Noster at benj at nosterplebs.com. That's increasingly where I'm spending more time. My website is peonylanewine.com, and I ship all over the United States. So if you're curious about some good natural Colorado wine, give me a shout or place an order.
At one point, I thought you were gonna to just recite your Noster public key. I was like, no way.
No way.
All right, thanks a lot, Ben, and thanks everyone for tuning in. My name is Vivian Chang, and see you in the next episode of Life with Bitcoin.